Stand on the shores of eternity, stand in silence and listen to the rhythmic rhyming chimes of time. Close your eyes and see the mossed and whitened stones of infinity. Speak with lips of tranquility, of a love divine. Inhale the scent of history as you stand on the shores of eternity. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lough Gur House, the home of Patrick and Fianna O'Sullivan. We are gathered here this evening for the project led by Daniel Clancy to record the oral history and folklore of Lough Gur. This evening we hope to gather some of the music, the songs, the poetry, the stories and the folklore of Lough Gur. And Patrick himself will tell us of some of the history of the house and of its importance to the area. Unfortunately, many of these great houses are now in a derelict condition. But we are very lucky here in Lough Gur that this house is kept in such pristine condition by Patrick and Fianna. And that they have a passion to keep the house as much as it's possible true to its original building. So Patrick and Fianna, we thank you for that. And we also would like to give you a special thank you for your generosity in opening your home to us for this gathering this evening. Lough Gur has inspired creative people for over 6,000 years, all the way back to the Neolithic people. And that's evidence in some of the artefacts that have been found around Lough Gur. For example, the stone axe heads, works of art that were created specially as offerings for the gods. And in the centuries that followed, right up to today, artists, storytellers, poets, craftspeople, musicians have all taken inspirations from the Enchanted Lake. One of the many musicians that was associated with Lough Gur was the 17th century harpist Thomas O'Connellan Rua. He liked to be called Rua because of his long red beard. He was born in 1625 in Coolamahan, County Sligo, and he travelled all across Ireland, Wales and Scotland performing. He was even made a freeman of Glasgow. He died in 1697 here in Lough Gur while performing in Boucher's Castle. People from all over Ireland, Wales and Scotland attended his funeral in Champalnua, and that was no mean feat in the late 17th century. On the day of his funeral, it is said that all the banshees in Ireland gathered on Eagle's Rock on Knockadoon, and their wailing could be heard all across Ireland. And Mr. Butler, a musician from Bruff, was attending the funeral, and he recorded the notes of the banshee's wail, and that was published in the Dublin Penny Journal, and that music is still available today. O'Connellan is said to have composed over 700 tunes. Sadly, most of those are lost to us. But lucky enough, we have still 6 or 7 of those tunes. And we are fortunate tonight to have Dr. Fianna Nicolan here with us, wonderful harpist. And she is going to open the night with one of O'Connellan's tunes. Owen Brosnan lived in Lough Gur, across the lake from where we are here tonight. He was born in 1847 in the middle of the Great Irish Famine, and he died in 1912, the year that the Titanic sank, another tragic event. Brosnan was a farmer, a herbalist, and a poet, and he wrote satiric verses about the landlords which he hated. But one of his most iconic and beautiful poems was called Champel Nua, and we have Tom Tierney and his daughter Jean here tonight to sing Champel Nua for us.
No, you're okay. So, as John said, Champel Nua was written by Owen Brosnan, and it references O'Connell and Rua in the song. I suppose I would regard this as the anthem of Lough Gur. When anything happens in Lough Gur, this is the song that I think people sing. So we'll have a go at it. Now, as usual, when Owen Brosnan wrote songs or poems, he put an awful lot of verses into them. Champel Nua alone has 6 verses and 6 choruses. So we're not going to do the whole lot. We'll shorten it a small bit. So Champel Nua by Owen Brosnan. Oh, I long to see the churchyard by Lough Gur's romantic shore, where the shamrock and the ivy ever grow, where the wild dove and the raven like protecting spirits soar, o'er the green graves of silent Champel Nua. Sweet Champel Nua, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them, and their choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy loved sleepers, Champel Nua. By that high and hoary gable, which defies the rack of time, sleeps O'Connell beside the shining wave. Those who loved his Irish melodies, enchanting and sublime, should lay a wreath of laurels o'er his grave. Sweet Champel Nua, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them, and their choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy loved sleepers, Champel Nua. Tradition says the banshee keened a sad and lonely wail, with grief no human bosom had ever known, as she paced those ancient ramparts, towering o'er the sunny vale, when they laid him in silent Champel Nua. Sweet Champel Nua, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them, and their choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy loved sleepers, Champel Nua. May the clay press lightly o'er him in his silent, nameless grave, where the shamrock and the ivy ever bloom, and the beech trees tall and shady over him gently wave, till the trumpet blast shall call him from the tomb. Sweet Champel Nua, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them, and their choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy loved sleepers, Champel Nua. O'er the graves of thy loved sleepers, Champel Nua.
I've mentioned earlier of all the creative people that take inspiration from Lough Gur, and many of those people were poets. We're very fortunate to have one of those still living poets with us here tonight, George Finch. So we need to appreciate him while we have him. And George has a beautiful poem that he wrote called New Church, and of course New Church is, as we know, Champel Nua. So George, could we please have you
I was at my son's wedding recently, and he was 40 when he got married. So I was asked to say a few words. So I said, I thought I'd never live to see this day. And of course, it didn't get a great reaction. No, I said, what I mean is I thought I'd never live long enough to see this day. So, okay. So George Finch, a native of Lough Gur, Patrick Swell. And for those of you who are at the Heritage Centre for Heritage Week, you will have heard the poem, The Greenstone Circle. So we're on a tour of Lough Gur, and our second stop on the way is New Church Cemetery and Church, or known locally as Chomple Nua. And your guide is there today, and he'll show you the sites around New Church, some of the people who are buried there, tell you a little about the building itself. And the style, which has been temporarily removed by the Office of Public Works, will be brought back, hopefully early next year, and it'll be in pristine condition, please God. So we enter by the style. So this is a poem that I wrote in May of 2024, and it goes something like this. Enter by a stone-cut stile, a threshold into a world of days gone by, a church built by the Geraldines, restored by account, still standing defiantly on the high ground. Silent sleepers rest in peace under the shade of the sycamore trees. Roman Catholic outside, Church of Ireland within, segregated in life and segregated again. Illuminated sky at night, light from an ancient city bright. The gable, a silhouette against the brightness, overshadowing a grave that is nameless. When Tomás O'Connell died at the castle of Lough Gur, the Monarch Heron created a stir. As they lowered the bard into the clay, the banshee's wail was heard here that day. The writer Owen Bresnan and poet of some fame preserved for posterity O'Connell's name. Chomple Nua he wrote while on the high seas. He longed to be back here among the tall trees. And let's not forget our own seanchaí, Tom Mac of Knockcrew, great stories at he. Nura Fúrse boss, vi dina a gull. The clocks, they stopped that night in Lough Gur. Across the lake, the big house stands, former seat of the landlord, huge acres of lands, with a backdrop of hills and trees of green, a relic to old decency, so serene. And cross again to Knockadoon, where circles of stone and hut sites are strewn, 6,000 years of habitations. Protect them now for future generations. Boharina Goppel and Killallock Hill, little road of the horses, can be seen there still, and Corrigonetig, the rock of the lies, where fairies dance neath moonlit skies. Corrigan Affron, great outcrop of rock, a place of assembly set aside for the flock. Mass was said there in times of oppression. The priest risked his life to hear their confession. A fragment of a wall is all that prevails of St. Catherine's Monastery for women wearing veils. When the monasteries were suppressed, its fate was sealed. Monastery na Gaelig, now forlorn in the field. Around New Church there are stories and fables, lays and legends within sight of those gables. It truly is a place of tranquility, a treasure revered in a land of antiquity. Gramagwif.
Andres MacRae was one of the famous 18th century Maig poets, mostly based in Croom. Andres was a lad about town. He loved sport, music, drinking, and the ladies, like most poets. But because of his carry-on, he had a falling out many times with the local clergy, and he was eventually banished from Carew to Ballinety. And he was so heartbroken after being banished from Carew to Ballinety that he wrote the beautiful poem Slán le Mag. And we have two local well-known musicians here tonight, Tom Flynn and Mike Whelan, and they're going to play the beautiful tune, Slán le Mag, the lament for the Meg. Very good.
Do you want to say the end of that again there? Just what they're going to play for us.
So Tom and Mike Whelan are going to play the tune Slán le Mag, the lament for the Meg.
Well, can I just say, my introduction to Lough Gur was back in the 1950s. My dad was born back the road there, and he used to tell us when we were young about the famous Lough Gur. So my friend and myself, at the age of 14, decided we were going to find Lough Gur. So we cycled out from Limerick, and eventually we got to the lake, went up by Knockadoon, and way up at the top of Knockadoon we found this village, as we thought, a Stone Age village, clay and wattle. And we were thrilled. It was looking for a tribe that lived there. But what we didn't know was the BBC in those years had constructed this hut, two huts there. And of course, afterwards we found out. So that was my introduction to Lough Gur. 1954, I'd say it was. Professor O'Riordan was involved in the time at the lake there, you know. So that was my introduction to Lough Gur.
And the BBC did it for what reason, do you know?
They recorded a programme about Lough Gur. It's probably in the archives still, you know. But that was my introduction to Lough Gur. So the piece I'm playing it's kind of a lament, really, you know. So here goes.
You'll have to wait. You have to wait. We are nearly finished the first half. Cross your legs, you'll be grand. That was an excuse. So people that come to visit us here in Lough Gur, one of the places that they will always visit is the Great Grange Stone Circle, just a stone throw here from the house. And of course, you know, it's reputed to be one of the largest stone circles in Ireland or England, with 113 standing stones. And it's also one of only 7 embanked stone circles here in Ireland. But when you go and you're looking at the circle, right across is stone number 1, Rannoch Crum Dove, and he's a corn god, bringing the initial sheaf of wheat from under the ground. I won't say any more about Crum Dove tonight. I'll move on to stone 12 and 13, set at 59 degrees north of east. That's a very important number. But again, I'm not going to talk any more about that. And then we come all the way around to the hornstones, 67 and 68. The rest of the stones, we don't know if there's any significance to them or not. But my favourite stone there is stone number 113, and we call that our lovely Etna. And it's very appropriate that Etna is right beside Crum Dove, the corn god, because Etna is a corn dolly. And back in the day, when there was no machinery or anything like that, a metal of men or a group of men would gather to harvest the crop. Help the farmer to harvest his crop. And the farmer's wife, maybe his daughters, and some of the local ladies would gather to feed the men. And the last sheaf of wheat to be trashed would be given to a single man in the group, and he'd make a little corn dolly of it. And he'd take a strand of corn and he'd tie a knot in it. And then he would hand it to a single lady in the group in the hope that she might accept his hand in marriage. And so to this day, when someone is getting married in Ireland, we have the saying, tying the knot. And that's where that came from. Of course, we are very fortunate in an awful lot of ways here in Lough Gur. But we are very, very fortunate to have Brian Collopy as the manager of the Heritage Centre. And Brian is a historian and a folklore. And Brian brings great enthusiasm to the folklore of Lough Gur. So Brian, you might give us a little bit of the folklore of Lough Gur.
Right, so actually it's going to segue nicely with what John said. So just beyond the Grangestone Circle, there's a standing stone, and this stone is called Clough-Villa, the stone of the sacred tree. And it's interesting that at our biggest stone circle, you have this stone called the stone of the sacred tree, Clough-Villa, when arguably one of the most important stories of Lough Gur involves the sacred tree. So once every 7 years, the lake disappears. Where there once was water, there's now just this green field, with one exception. In the middle of this field grows a singular tree. This tree is more than 1,000 feet high. It shades out more than 1,000 acres, a tree bigger than mortal perception. And they say if you come along at this time, you'll see sitting amongst these great spidery roots an old woman, and this is the goddess Anya. And Anya is knitting. She's a knit-all. She's knitting a great green cloak that covers the crown of the tree. So, 200 years ago, thereabouts, a Buachaleen, a little boy, he's riding past on his horse when the enchantment takes hold. The water disappears. He sees the tree, he sees the old woman, and he sees the green cloak, and he says to himself, I'm having that cloak. He kicks his horse into a gallop, rides down the middle of this newly exposed field, rides past the old woman, grabs the yarn connecting her knitting needles to the cloak at the crown of the tree, pulls it with a great lurch off the crown and takes off to the far side of the lake. As soon as he does, Anya stands up and she shouts at him in fury and she says, Chuat cuat the wuna walav eg marchioch do hirna man marav eg fuadach and vrat una dum vahas. To you, the permanent silence, riding from the land of the dead woman and taking from my head the green cloak. And as soon as Anya shouts this imprecation, this curse, the water of Lough Gur forms behind her and it takes off like a train after this young fella, and he's riding for all he's worth. This wall of water, the entirety of Lough Gur chasing after him. Instantly he knows he's hardly going to outrun this water, but he's hardly going to stop his horse, so he just keeps riding. The water getting closer and closer, faster and faster. Just as the water is lapping at the heels of his horse, Anya's hand emerges, and in terror the young man jumps from his horse, landing on the shore by Ardaluda. The water restores, Anya pulls the cloak from him, and the lake restores as to what it was. The young man gets his breath back after 15-20 seconds, looks over to his right and sees his poor old horse has gone glassy-eyed. And as he looks down further, he sees that the horse has been torn asunder, with the bottom half taken into the other world as punishment. And what the old people used to say fado long ago was that if the cloak and Anya were ever separated, Lough Gur would be no more, and also anyone who happens to live on the shore of Lough Gur. Sorry about that, Patrick. Chin chin.
Well, of course, we're here in the home of Patrick and Fiona, and to look out the window, to our left, we can see, as Brian referenced to it there, Arda Luda. And just beyond Arda Luda is the Great Stone Circle. And here in front of Arda Luda is one of, I think, is it only 3 Cranogues, man-made islands left in Lough Gur. So one is right out here. As we look out, we can see the enchanted lake. To its left is Knockadoon, and behind the house would be Knockfinnell. So that's where we're here in this enchanted land tonight, a beautiful home of Patrick and Fiona. And I suppose, you know, that we've talked about the lake now and the setting and everything. I think it might be a nice opportunity to just have a little chat with Patrick. So Patrick and Fiona, again, many thanks for your generosity in having us in your beautiful home this evening.
A great pleasure.
And Patrick, I believe you came here in 1983 and bought a house and moved into live here. Is that correct?
That's right. In 1983.
1983. Can you tell us a little about the condition of the house when you would have bought it?
Well, the house was livable. Now, over the years, we had to do all the plumbing and electricity and windows. And I think we have something like 46 windows in the house. So it took some time to get those in place. But we replaced the windows exactly as how they were, using timber windows, which was difficult to get at the times. And that's it. We worked very hard. We understand the importance of the house historically. And we feel that we are custodians of the house. And when we pass on, no doubt somebody else will come, and we hope they will love it as much as we did. And the people we bought it from, Peter Matson, he was an Englishman, he hated leaving this house. But unfortunately, his marriage broke up. And I remember a time when, I should tell you the story how I came to buy the house, perhaps.
Please do, yeah.
I lived in Limerick City, and I was business all my life. Since I was 21, I started my first business. So I'm not a good storyteller, I have to say, because I concentrated on business for the best part of my life. It's only now am I beginning to appreciate and relax and enjoy all your company and your music and songs and everything else. But up till very recently, I was very much concentrating on business. That was my life. And I'm glad to have finished that chapter and moved on to a much more satisfying time in my life. So Fiona's brother, Tom is his name, he had just got married, and he was living in Limerick City, and his house was being prepared. It wasn't ready yet after his wedding. So he rented the lodge here in Lough Gur and lived there for about 6, 7, 8 months, I think, Fiona. Yeah. And Fiona told me that there was this house possibility coming up for sale. There was some trouble in the family, and it might be for sale. So with that, now we were living in a modest house at the time, and I was convinced, even though I was in business, doing quite well, not to move from a small house to a middle house to a next house. I was waiting to find the house of my dreams. And that's what I concentrated on. And so Fiona and I, we drove out here one afternoon, and we pulled up outside the door, and I said to Fiona, instinctively, I said, you stay in the car. So I went around to the side door, the French windows, and knocked, and this lady came out. Peggy was her name, and she was the nanny for the 2 children that Peter Matson had. And I explained to her that Tom was a relation of Fiona, so there was a connection, so she wasn't fearful. So she invited me in just to the kitchen area. And she told me that Peter Matson loves to show off the house just like I do, and we do. And that he'd love to meet me sometime, and she'd give him my card and so on and so on. So I left her and thanked her very much, went off, and within about a month maybe, I had a phone call from her again that Peter Matson said, would I like to come out and see the house? And I did. And we stood in this very room. And here I was looking out the window with him. He was standing. And I had my card ready to say, if you ever going to sell this house, give me a call. But he cried. There was a tear in his eye. And he said, I love this house. It's been the happiest home for me, he said. and I never will sell it. So I put my card back and thought that was a lovely thought and a lovely gesture. So anyway, I thanked him and I left. And at this stage, I had seen a little bit of the ground floor, and now I had seen a little bit of this floor, looking out the window, that particular window there overlooking the lake. And I think within about 3 months, this lady, Peggy, rang me again and said, Peter Matson wants to see you privately. And I remember the words exactly. And the hair stood up on the back of my hands. I knew exactly. I just knew it, what was happening. This was like destiny coming. And I remember driving up the drive, and I said, my God, if I ever lived here, I said, won't harm one tree, 1 inch of this place will I harm or interfere with. So I came in anyway, and I was sitting here in this room, probably the seat somewhere here, and I looked around, and all the pictures had a pink spot or a blue spot. Tiny little, those peel-off little stickers you put on windows and doors. And I knew then that their marriage perhaps was broken up, and they had divided the spoils of the house. And long story short, we negotiated, and there was like 120 other acres available, which I could have bought at the time. And I settled on buying the house and 20 acres, and we shook hands on it, and that went through. So within a year of I meeting Peter, we had actually moved in a miraculous way.
It was destiny.
It was kind of destiny, and it's been the happiest place, Fiona, hasn't it? It's like we've reared our children here. We were married in Grange Church. Like it was a special, special place. So we love sharing it, which is why you're so welcome here this evening. It's just a super place, it really is. Magical. And, we have, my son had 2 children, which were born very early in life and died very early in life, and they're buried in Grange Church. Oh. So we're part of it.
But it's nice to have them here near you.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, it's very much our home. Yeah. Does that answer some of your questions, John?
Yeah, and we could go on about your careers and everything, but I don't think we need to do that. It's the house, and just a little bit about the history of the house. Do you know when it was built and the purpose, who it was built for?
Look, everybody is saying it was built as a hunting lodge, as we understand it, originally. And then the figure of the Count de Salis comes into play. Yes. And he seems to have played a very prominent role, who acquired the house through intermarriage with other people, other wealthy people in the land. There was 4,000 acres associated with the house, I believe, at one stage. And he was a remarkable man. His family, the Salis family, were mercenaries, all mercenaries for the Pope. And that's where they got their money from. And this wasn't a full-time house for him. This was like a summer house. He would come and visit it. He had houses in London and in France and all over. Swiss-German origin. And he was funny thing, he was also a Knight of the Holy Sepulchre, which is a unique Catholic order set up to look after the special religious places around the world, including Bethlehem and the Holy City and whatever. And Fiona's dad was responsible for setting up the very same organization here in Ireland. And we have a wonderful portrait inside of him where he was knighted on 2 occasions, I beg your pardon, by the Pope. He became a Knight's Cross of the Holy Sepulchre and a Knight of St. Gregory. And it's unique that connection, family connection, is there between the original Count de Salis and Fiona's family.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, there's something a little bit magical about it.
You have another lovely story about Count de Salis's daughter, Amelia.
Yeah, Amelia, a most beautiful. He had 2 daughters, beautiful seemingly, stunning daughters. I'm going to tell you a little bit aside first because it's just come to my mind. The Earl of Sandwich used to visit the house, and he was attracted to one of the daughters, and he used to take her for walks around the hills around Lough Gur. And during those walks, in the kitchen below, which ladies you're invited to see and look at if you want to, is where they used to get slices of bread and put meat in it and pack a picnic basket. And he would take that, and this was kind of unique to him at the time, they would take that as they strolled and walked and had a picnic on the hills of Lough Gur. But he was a notorious gambler and gambled through all the gambling houses in Europe. And instead of ordering, because at that stage they weren't eating with forks and knives, they were using their hands to eat food. So you couldn't play cards in a gambling casino with it all greasy. And he would look for pieces of bread with meat in between. So he'd keep his hands clean, his fingers clean. And that's where the origin, the thoughts came from this kitchen down here in Lough Gur House.
That's where sandwich came from.
And that's where sandwich came from. And now you will see restaurants called Sandwich or Lord's Earl of Sandwich around the world.
That's a lovely story.
But I kind of directed away to another one. What was I saying there?
I was asking you about Amelia de Salis.
Yeah, Amelia, the beautiful Amelia. He had 2 beautiful daughters. And he was a British diplomat. Now remember, at that time, we were under British rule. And he was a Catholic. And this was a Catholic household. And it would be somewhat unusual for him to have such a diplomatic position, except in his association with Rome. It suited the whole circumstances. So he was in Rome, and his daughter met this Italian count, another count, and she fell in love with him, and he fell madly in love with her. And they planned to marry. And on the day of the wedding, the Italian count never turned up. Mystery. Nobody knew why or whatever. So she returned to Ireland and married a gentleman from J.H. North and Company in Dublin, an auctioneering company, a real estate company. And she lived happily there after, perhaps somewhat of her. But the count, the Italian count, was packed off by his family to South America and became a priest, and eventually became a bishop in South America. And it was not until he was made Pope, Pope Pius IX, did he find out eventually did she find out why he didn't turn up for the wedding. His family, who were very Jesuit-conscious people and supported the Jesuit philosophy, wanted their son to become a priest, bishop, and so forth. And they interfered with the correspondence between the Irish girl and the Italian to such an extent that they destroyed the relationship. And he thought she had left him, didn't love him, and went back to Ireland. Totally untrue. She was loyal to him and he was loyal to her. So the family interfered completely. On the day of his, I'm not sure if coronation is correct, but on the day of his appointment as Pope, he wrote to her, and now she was Mrs. North at the time, and he explained to her what had happened and said, "You have made me Pope." That was the final part in it. And he sent a beautiful greeting to her. So that's where the story ends. I don't know what happened after that. He was a very liberal-minded Pope and highly respected. But that was the daughter of the Count de Salis and her love affair with Pope Pius IX.
That's a lovely story. And can I just ask you then, Patrick, when you bought the house at some stage, you went to Limerick, I think, to a dealer and bought two paintings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, I was looking to buy a milk churn.
The difference between a milk churn and a painting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted just as a piece that I'd like. And he sold it. I had paid him for it and he sold it. So in exchange, he gave me 2 portraits. He offered them to me, 2 portraits. And I looked at them and I said, yeah, absolutely. I go. Actually, I saw the frames. The frames were beautiful. So I swapped them for him. And they're hanging inside here now. And one is of Pope Pius. So and I had that hanging in my home in Limerick. And when I brought him here to Lough Gur House, I felt I had somehow united them. a little bit in it.
So eventually, Pope Pius did come to Lough Gur.
Pope Pius has been here in spirit for a long time, indeed.
Out by the pond.
The big pond at the back, is
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Oh, that's my place anyway, because I have another swinging chair there, and God, when the weather's nice, there's nowhere nicer. It's beautiful because you can still see the lake, and it's so quiet and private. I love it. My favourite place anyway.
I would say this room. This is a magical room. When the Count de Salis came here with his wife on one occasion, and he was welcomed by all the staff, and there's a fabulous recorded response to him coming here, and a lovely speech from himself thanking the local people. And I mentioned that to you, Brian. That should be interpreted some way in real life. It should be said. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful words, and how the Count de Salis was so highly respected locally. Not all landlords were, but even to this day we meet people who worked for previous owners and whatever, and there seems to be a tradition in this house of respect for everybody. It's quite unique, I think. It's really a special house.
And Patrick, when I spoke to you first about doing this event here, and you were very enthusiastic, and we thought, where would we?
I have to say anything, but go
No,
on.
yeah. But we talked about where we might hold it, and we were thinking the bar area outside. But somehow this room was just attracting us all the time, and it's a special room, I think, as well.
First of all, it's very much a family room. It's where sometimes in the afternoons or evenings you sit here on your own, and it's a relaxing room. There's a lovely curvature arch in part of it. There's 3 windows overlooking, 2 overlooking the lake and 1 overlooking the garden. There's a lovely fireplace we usually have a good fire going, and comfortable chairs. And it's peaceful here. If you want to contemplate with God, this is the room you can do it in.
At Christmas, though, when all the family are here, there isn't anywhere to sit because it's all taken up, and that's when the real family comes out.
Yeah, that's true.
Playing games, bad language, drinking. But great fun.
Sullivan's
We play a game of cheat, which everybody is allowed to cheat in cards. Just we admit it, so we all cheat. Yeah.
It's lovely at Christmas, really gorgeous.
And we've only one occasion of a ghost in the house.
This is what we want to hear.
Oh, right. And this was we had friends staying from Dublin. Can't remember his name. Liam Phelan. He passed away recently, so he's probably listening to us. And he was staying in one of the guest rooms near the toilet, off where you were using, just down the hallway there. And he had this experience of somebody putting his hand around, his arm around him at night, and he ran out of the room, ran like mad. And it was the middle of the night, so none of us knew about this until the morning, he told us. And he saw this image of a monk. Now, this house has no association with monks that we're aware of. And the only other thing that happened in this house is that Fiona would be sitting in the study, and she'd hear people walking up the steps constantly. Is that right, Fiona?
Yeah, in the beginning when we first came here, but
Yeah.
I presume that was the heating was.
No,
just
these were
was
steps you
well,
felt.
it did. It
coming
sounded
up.
like someone coming down the stairs, and it wouldn't be anybody. It was a bit weird, all right.
And so I put, not knowing what to do, I put one of the heavy iron chairs at the top of the landing, and that stopped it. So I don't know why or how, but they were the only 2 incidents, except my own incident coming out of the church, which was frightening. I don't know if I want to talk about it, but because that's a real ghost story.
Yeah,
it really
want
is.
to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's really frightening, John. It's I mean, I don't want to even remember it. It's there's 250 years ago, the church, they had a burial ground down in Grange Church, and as they say, there's good people buried there, which they are by and large, but there are perhaps some not so good buried there. And it was evening time. I know it was November, and I was coming out of the church. I must have been one of the few people later coming out of the church. And I was walking out. And we have a small little green gate. It was a green gate, now it's an iron gate, but it was a green gate there. And walking down past the graveyard and coming out. And I remember, oh God, walking. I hate even telling the story now. This is a true story, and it's not like I can feel my hands now. And I was walking anyway. God, I felt there was somebody behind me. And I looked around, nothing there. But I could feel this cold breeze in the back of my neck. It was really cold, and it was a frosty evening. My breath was white nearly with frost as I was walking, and I was walking up the drive. And again, I looked around, and I did feel a presence, whatever it was. Now, you know, when you're doing this, you could think, is it my imagination? Is it a chill? Is it what? You don't know, and I didn't know. And I looked around, and again, nothing. But I was walking quicker because now my feelings, my emotions were getting stronger and stronger, and I was getting frightened. And I can remember the fear I felt growing. So I looked around anyway, finally, and I saw this elongated greyness. That's all I can describe. About 8 or 10 feet away from me. And now my breath, I couldn't breathe for a second, and I started to run. And as I ran, and I can visualize it now, and I could still feel the presence behind me. Fiona's laughing now, you know, coming up the drive, there's a big tree. I think it's an oak tree. And I ran at it, and I remember the splinters in my fingers as I climbed it, and my chest was sore because I ran at it. And this thing grabbed my leg. It's cold. It was freezing now. And pulled my leg. And pulled it, and pulled it. Just like I'm pulling your leg now. Sorry, God.
And we had this sound.
She kept laughing, and I nearly started laughing.
Well, you know, Patrick, I was talking to a local man a few days ago, and I told him I was coming to the house and what we were doing. Oh, he says, you know that Patrick O'Sullivan is a comedian. I said, what? Oh, yeah, he said, he's a comedian. Wait till you're in his presence. And now we know why. Before we wrap up this, I have a little story for Patrick. So many, many years ago, when we were young, when I was a young boy, and I had 6 sisters and 2 brothers, so there was 9 of us. And my first cousins lived in the passage, the Hazes, and there was 6 of them. So you can imagine there was a big age gap between us. But my mother and father had visitors over from England, and there might have been 3 or 4 children in that as well. So, of course, we were out about, the mother and father and the visitors were chatting in the kitchen. But my sister Alice slipped into the bedroom, and out the window she put the sheet. And up we went to the top of the passage. There was 3 houses in the passage, and my mother now lives in the top house. She's 92 years of age. And across at the other side of the passage was a little cow house, and then jutting out from it towards the road was a pigsty. So we all went into this cow house, and that time there wouldn't have been too many cars on the road, but we had the car coming in the distance. So she put the sheet over her, and she went out by the side of the pigsty, and just as the car came up the road, she went out on the road with the sheet over her, and she waving the hands up and down. The car passed up the hill, and when it got to the top of the hill, up where Malachy Hayes is living now, the brakes suddenly went on, and it started to reverse slowly back the road. And of course, we all took off down the passage, pulling the smaller ones with us, and getting into the yard and hiding. And the car turned in the passage and shined the lights down. And I often think afterwards 2 things: that we could have given that poor man that was driving the car a heart attack, or that he always tells the story of the night that he saw the ghost.
And can I just say, he did not make that up. That actually
Not like the Joker here.
Our son Patrick had a girlfriend at one stage, and up in his room, she was very sensitive. She used to see different things all the time. When she was young, she saw ghosts and that, and she used to tell us, oh God, it was like people in the attic, she said, with crates that they were dragging them along the floor. And of course, Patrick was there one day. They were in bed in the morning, and she heard this. It was Patrick on the bedside table. And then another time he went into the bathroom with a sheet and came out and nearly frightened the life out of her. We've never seen her since.
That was one way of getting rid of her.
By the way, there are no ghosts in the house. None whatsoever. No.
So comedians run in the family.
When we first came here, our huge impression of the house was that it was not in any way an austere house, and it was real homely feeling. It's just a lovely warm feeling about the house. We never felt anything.
And it has kept that feeling ever since.
Yeah, and my parents, when they used to come and visit, my mother used to always say, this house would be lovely if you had £1 million to spend on it. Yeah, it's been very happy though. Really, really happy home, thank God. Just wood.
Well, Patrick, it was lovely chatting with you here in your home with your lovely wife, Fiona. And again, many, many thanks for making us so welcome.
Let's have some coffee, tea and scones.
That's great. Yeah.
Coffees and scones. Fiona spent all morning cooking scones for you ladies.
You're putting their legs again, are you?
I'm pulling your legs again.
Welcome back, everyone, back to this beautiful room. We're after having a lovely tea, coffee and scones, compliments of Fiona, the Bannon tea. So thank you for that, Fiona. All right. So everyone is full up and ready to go. So Fiona, second tune tonight is the beautiful O'Connellan tune, Era on Law, The Dawn of Day. And that was the tune that influenced the beautiful Dawning of the Day. The Dawn of Day was an earlier version of it. So over to you, Fiona. So the Maid of Lough Gur is another beautiful Owen Brosnan song. And once again, we're going to have Tom and Jean to perform The Maid of Lough Gur by Owen Brosnan.
There was a maiden fair and young, but I can't tell you her name. She lived down by sweet Lough Gur side, that noted place of fame, where Desmond castles towering high, where knights and scythes reside. Oh, I'd long to stray with that maiden gay, down by sweet Lough Gur side. This angel bright, her step is light as Knockeeney's fairy queen, who dances in the sunbeams light, all dressed in gold and green. No fairy lass like my Colleen Drass, in her heart you could confide. I'd forever stray with that maiden gay, down by sweet Lough Gur side. She loves all Ireland true and well, as any girl I've seen. She loves the bold Treen Fenian boys, who fought near flag of green. If I could steal her heart away, she has my soul annoyed. It's then I stray with that maiden gay, down by sweet Lough Gur side. Lough Gur it is a charming place, where strangers come to view. Romantic hills and valleys fair, and the sunny waters blue, where Desmond sports his enchanted steed through the shimmering waters wide. I'd long to stray with that maiden fair, down by sweet Lough Gur side. Oh, I'd long to stray with that maiden fair, down by sweet Lough Gur side.
For those of you here tonight that don't believe in the fairies, when Tom started singing about the Queen of the Fairies, Anya, Queen of the Fairies, she came down the chimney and made the fire sparkle. And of course, one of the iconic folklore tales of Lough Gur is that of Gorod Irla, the third Earl of Desmond. And Gorod was the human son of Anya, Queen of the Fairies. And she banished him to live beneath the dark and broody waters of the lake, still there today. Of course, being a fairy queen, she gave him one reprieve. And that is that he can come up out of the lake once every 7 years on his white steed and ride around the lake, the circumference of the lake, just once on that moonlit night. And when his silver shoes wear out, the silver shoes of his white horse wear out, Gorod will come back once again in his human form and rule over the lands of Desmond. Of course, many, many people here in Lough Gur know that story of Gorod Irla, and they're very careful and inquisitive to know when that 7-year cycle comes around, because, of course, you don't want to meet Gorod Irla on that night. For if you do, Gorod will take you to beneath the lake, and there you will have to remain in his watery abode until such time as the spell placed on Gorod by his mother is broken. Of course, we spoke earlier of the influence and inspiration that the creative people have taken from Lough Gur. And another poet here that lived just down the road in Grange, John Clancy, wrote a beautiful poem called The 7 Years. And we're going to call now again on the living poet, George Finch, to come and recite the 7-year cycle.
Just before you start recording, well, Garroyd's Midnight Ride, I think, even though I might have led you astray calling it the 7-year cycle, but I think the real proper name for it is Garroyd's Midnight Ride. But I just want to say, before I start, Pat and Fiona don't know this, I presume they don't, but you may know, I live across the lake at the other side of Newchurch. And, I suppose I have an age now that I can remember back in the times when there was no modern conveniences in houses. And of course, the last thing the man of the house would do at night is to take a wander out to do the necessary and have a look around, as it were. So I have that kind of a habit as well, even though I have a modern, even though I do have a modern convenience.
Of course, George, all the Finches have a reputation of having a weak bladder.
So I take a wander out and up to the top of the road. And I would just like to thank the Sullivan family for throwing a light on Lough Gur. And what I mean by that is that when I go up, especially in the winter nights, of course the spotlight is on from the great house. And it throws a beautiful light across the lake. And better again, since Patrick has taken up residence in the cottage, lo and behold, a second light has appeared. And it's absolutely beautiful, and you may not realise it, but I'm telling you now, I hope that the lights keep shining. Okay? And it's absolutely beautiful and magical. So, okay. So, here again in Lough Gur House, which used to be called Grange Hill House, of course, in times of yore, I'm going to recite a poem written by John Clancy, a Grange man. And Egan was, I'm not so sure was he a brother, but certainly a family relation to Saoirse Clancy, who was the Lord Mayor of Limerick when he was killed by ground forces on the night of the 6th, 7th of March 1921. And of course, Saoirse would have known Dick O'Connell or Richard O'Connell from Carrick-on-Lish, who, after the truce and the foundation of the Free State, lived in this house for a very short time. So there's a roundabout connection between Egan and a former resident of the house, Richard or Dick O'Connell from Carrick-on-Lish. So this is Garroyd's Midnight Ride. It tells the story of Garroyd Earla riding around the lake, and also of Diarmuid and Grania, which we associate with the Wedge Tomb. And another story of Sean O'Hay, and indeed the Thatcher Houlihan who put the shoes back onto Garroyd's horse. Their reward, of course, was gold sovereigns, but when they came in the morning, they had nothing but ivy leaves, some might say furze bushes. So just to fill you in on the little stories contained in this poem. The 7 years are up a store, if memory serves me right, and Garroyd sits astride once more, his milk-white steed tonight. Down by Lough Gur's enchanted lake, where Desmond chiefs of old had gathered all their henchmen brave to guard the last stronghold. He gallops past the castle bawn, drawbridge and giant's grave, where Diarmuid and fair Grania slept beside the silvery wave. When in their flight and sorry plight, so runs the bardic tale, just to evade the shining blade of angry Connacht's wail. Now Garroyd's ride by Lough Gur's side is legend far and near, and Garroyd's fame and mystic fate is heard with awe and fear. For whosoe'er shall cross his way must cross the great divide, unless perchance he's feeling gay, well, he'd take you then astride. He'd show you o'er his golden store strewn around the castle hall, diamonds of the richest ore hung on that cold damp wall. Half of the riches will be yours if you can tack the shoe of shining silver to the steed, but the nails must not come true. But if you should drive them through the quick, your race is surely run. The Thatcher Houlihan did the trick, a bright reward well won. Neath the bawn at the break of dawn, with grief poor Den perceives, for lo and behold his purse of gold were naught but ivy leaves. Ah, charming were those happy days and blissful evening tide, when first I heard from Charlie Hayes of Garroyd's Midnight Ride. So that's the story of Garroyd Midnight Ride, written by Egan Clancy. And we were talking earlier, Pat was talking earlier about the history of the house. And of course there was a tower house in Garroyd Island during the 14th century. And Garroyd, that was said to be his residence, his abode. And of course there's no trace of the tower left now. But some say that the stones were removed from the tower to build the great houses around Lough Gur. So we have another connection perhaps between Garroyd and Lough Gur House. And you'll see the last two lines of that where Egan Clancy said, when first I heard from Charlie Hayes of Garroyd's Midnight Ride. Well, that tells us that Charlie Hayes, again a great family in Lough Gur, associated with the finding of the shield, the sun's shield, he told the story to Egan Clancy. And if he hadn't, then Egan wouldn't have written this poem. And if he didn't, then I wouldn't be here reciting it tonight. So it's very important that when we go here tonight, that there's so much coming on social media and all sorts of platforms nowadays, that we keep spreading the word of Lough Gur. Thanks very much.
It's very important that our young people, our youth, are coming behind us and keeping our traditions alive, our singing, our music, our stories. And if you go to the Flares or go down to the Willie Clancy week and you walk down the street and there are the young people out on the street and they're playing their instruments and singing. And if you throw them a few bob, they'll play with extra vigour. And it's wonderful to see it. And it's very important that our culture and our traditions are kept going. As you travel around Ireland, you will see you will see lime kilns dotted here and there in the landscape. These lime kilns were from Elizabethan times, and I believe were still in use in some places up to the 1930s. The limestone was brought to these kilns and broke down into small little stones. Very hard work, as you can imagine. And it was put in layers into the lime kilns with kindling and firing between the layers. And the fire was lit, and according to the size of the kiln, it would be kept lighting for a week to 2 weeks. And eventually you had lime. And of course, this lime had a lot of uses. The two main uses were for fertilizer and for disinfectant. And I'm old enough, and there may be a few more here tonight, to remember when the cows would be turned out from the cow houses in the springtime out to grass, and then the farmer or his wife or whatever would whitewash all the houses. And of course that had two purposes as well. That would brighten up the farmyard, and it would also kill off any germs that were present in the farmyard. We have two lime kilns here in Lough Gur. One over by Champel New Church, which is now in ruins. And the other one is, of course, at the foot of the Interpretive Centre. And that got a facelift during COVID. And it's now a beautiful viewing area to view right out over the lake. But that lime kiln has also got a dark and sinister side to it. This is the story of poor Willie Rags. Of all the sorrows that have befallen all Ireland, it is the great famine that has left the blackest mark upon our souls. The wailing of the hungry and the dying, still imprisoned in the west wind, as it sweeps down the mountains, across the valleys and over the bogs, and on into the good lands of County Westmeath. The emaciated bodies of the dead heaped upon carts and dumped in pits. No Christian burial for them, no one left with the strength to mourn them. An estimated 1 million people died, and 1 million more took the coffin ships across the unforgiving Atlantic. Hundreds of thousands more perished in the hovels they called home, and were never accounted for. When the worst of the black days had passed, many vagrants travelled the roads of Ireland, depending on the generosity of the local farmers. Back then it was considered bad luck not to offer food and shelter to these unfortunates. Many came to Lough Gur and found kindness from the O'Briens, the family that farmed the land by the shores of Lough Gur. One regular visitor was a man known locally as Willie Rags. Rumour had it that he came from the County Mayo, where he had had a wife and 6 children. He worked for the local landlord, and in the evening time he'd attend to his lazy beds to provide for his family. One fine May evening, Willie sat on the stone wall that surrounded his plot, held his baby daughter in his arms, and admired his healthy potato stalks in his lazy beds, and sang a rebel song of when all Ireland would be free. Next morning, the potato stalks had withered and drooped. Within days, the stench of rotting potatoes fouled the air. And so the horror began. Left to the mercy of the workhouse, his family soon perished. The last to die was his baby girl. Those that traipsed the roads of Ireland knew not to come calling on May Eve, for that was the time of the year when the spirits of the other world could travel freely between their world and ours. No stranger would be allowed to cross the threshold for fear of them being an evil spirit in disguise. On one such evening, Willie Rags arrived in Lough Gur, and he knew not to go calling on the O'Brien family, so he sought shelter in the lime kiln. The lime kiln had been in use for weeks beforehand, and the stones still emitted heat. So Willie was happy to settle down in the lime kiln. He'd shade from the rain and heat from the stones to warm his aching bones. But unknown to Willie, when the lime kiln is in use, not alone does it emit heat, but it also radiates a poisonous gas. And Willie, like many the unfortunate before him, was found the next morning. Poor Willie was buried in a pauper's grave. Now, on moonlit nights, when lovers like to stroll by Lough Gur's romantic shores, some have heard a sibiling breeze whistle through the trees and Knockadoon and drift out over the enchanted waters of the lake. And there before him would stand the ghost of Willie Rags, in his outstretched arms, his baby daughter. And all those that have witnessed Willie swears that in the whispering breeze they hear Willie's voice plead, please take my little girl and give her what I could not, a Christian burial in a peaceful resting place. So if you should take it upon yourself to go for a stroll by Lough Gur's romantic shores on a moonlit night, and should you happen upon the ghost of Willie Rags, would you have the courage to take his little girl and give her what Willie so desperately wants, a Christian burial? And in doing so, you may also free the troubled spirit of poor Willie Rags. Just to say about that piece, George said earlier if Charlie Hayes hadn't told Egan Clancy his story, that poem would never have been written. And George Finch always told me that there was vagrants found in the lime kiln over by Lough Gur. And so I wanted to put a name or a face to one of the vagrants. So that's where that little story came from. One Starry Night is not tune or a song that you associate with Lough Gur, but it's very appropriate that it would be sung here tonight, because very soon Lough Gur will be awarded a Dark Skies Park, and of course it is a place of exceptional starry nights. So I'm going to call on Tom and Mike again to perform One Starry Night.
I'll get this settled in now. One starry night, as I lay sleeping. One starry night, as I lay in bed, I dreamt I heard wagon wheels a creaking. When I awoke, my love had fled. I've searched the highways, likewise the byways. I've searched the borings and the halting places too. I did inquire of all your people. Had you any sighting or seen signs of you? It's many's the mile, love, with you I've travelled. It's many's the hour, love, with you I spend. Sure I thought you were my love forever, but now I find, love, you were only lent. Well, I'm drunk today now, but I'm of time sober. A handsome rover from town to town, and when I'm dead and my life is over, money bond a story, won't you lay me down? It's many's the mile, love, with you I've travelled. It's many's the hour, love, with you I've spent. I thought you were my love forever, but now I find, love, you're only lent. But now I find, love, you're only lent.
Just moving along quickly because I know people are probably getting tired, maybe, or whatever. I'm going to ask Brian to do another little bit of the folklore of Lough Gur.
Right, so I'm going to tell a different story this time. And actually, Patrick, when you started telling your story about being haunted by the graveyard, I said, Jesus, I can't tell this story now because he has post-traumatic stress disorder, because what I'm going to talk about directly involves that site. And I said, to be honest with you, when you started saying it and I believed what you were saying, I said, my God, the story might have a bit more truth to it than I believed, you know. So there's a really important, and he's an obscure figure, I can't find much about him, a guy called David Fitzgerald. And he wrote an article in a periodical called Revue Celtique. It was published in about 1879. And arguably it's the most comprehensive collection we have of folklore pertaining to Lough Gur. What's especially important about it, I suppose, is he's gathering this from people who lived before the famine. So up to 1841, about 50% of the children around here have been raised through Irish. And I mean, that shift from Irish to English is so complete, really, that by 1901, there's a couple of people I cannot Gaeilge in Bruff, they're singing in Bruff, and none of the people in Bruff know it, even though 60 years ago everyone would have heard the language around here, you know. So this story David Fitzgerald collected from an old man, M. Whelan he calls him, from Inchton Lawrence, and this old man who dies before the publication, so dies before 1877, says he got it from the old people. So his old people, from a man probably born, we'll say 1820, 1810 maybe, his old people are going right back into the 18th century, you know. And it's an interesting little story, and one that hasn't really permeated into the 21st century consciousness for whatever reason, you know. So essentially what happens is, over in Grange in the churchyard Patrick was talking about, locals started noticing that there was a lot of holes in the graves, right? And they couldn't really make head nor tails of it, but obviously if you're burying your family in the graveyard, you don't really want to see these holes going in. Something was digging up the graves, especially the recently deceased, and it was, you know, it's upsetting people, of course it was, you know. So the landlord at the time, presumably Countess Alice, they don't state that, but it almost has to be him, he got two of the local men, he says, I want you to wait there around the church, and whatever is doing this, I want you to kill it. Gives the both of them a pair of shotguns, you know what I mean, or a shotgun each, and that's fine. Now at the time they were assuming it's a dog, to be bluntly honest with you. So the two men are at any event, they're hiding behind the gable end of the church under a full moon, waiting. And they're waiting for an hour or two, and all of a sudden they hear this rustling. And then they see, amazingly, just coming up beyond the Crannock here, Croc Island, up there, a giant eel worming its way up out of the lake. The eel goes in, slithers into the graveyard, goes over to a very recently buried person, digs a hole and just gets down with the snout and goes in and starts feeding. The two men are horrified, and the braver of the two eventually gets up enough courage, comes round the corner of the church, takes a shot, boom, hits it, kills it seemingly. And for whatever reason, and they don't tell us why, they bring it back to the big house and they put it into your kitchen for you. To be bluntly honest with you, that's where they put it. So the eel is put down in the kitchen, this big giant dead eel, and the men go home. The next evening, the men gather in the kitchen again, and they're just having their old crack, probably having, you know, the old crushkey and a bit of whiskey or whatever, when all of a sudden they hear this ululation, this plaintive cry coming up from the loch below. And they're all looking at each other like, what's this? What's this? You know what I mean? And all of a sudden the eel, what they thought was dead in the corner, all of a sudden doesn't seem to be dead. And then more amazingly, she starts to speak, and it's a woman's voice, and she says, Taig a viam lorgsa. Taig, who's looking for me. And one of the men, after again getting over the initial bout of panic, goes over, kicks it quite firmly, and he says, Imigadia haig in animan eel, go you to Taig in the name of the devil, and hunted the serpent out of the lake, or the eel, excuse me, and down to the bottom of the shore there and into the lake, where apparently she still resides to this day. So you don't have ghosts, you were saying, but you might have a haunted eel, you know what I mean? Okay, Sinead.
I didn't mean to do any more myself, but I have a special request from the man of the house, and when he speaks, you'll have to obey. So, my mother is 92 years of age. She'll be 93 next November. Her health hasn't been great for the last few years, but we're lucky enough to still have her with us. She had the gift of being able to feel the presence of the spirits in the ancient places. And that's a gift that she's handed on to me, which I'm proud to have. And also, when we were growing up, whatever time of the night that you needed to be called, she would call you. Could be 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, whatever. And she never owned a watch. And you may or may not have noticed, but I don't have a timepiece, a watch or a timepiece of any kind. To me, man-made time is the enemy of the creative mind. A true seanchaí has no truck with the ticking of time. It is the enemy of the creative mind, as I said, of the poet, the storyteller, the musicians, the singers. I was born and raised by the shores of Lough Gur in Roisin. By day we'd be told of the myths and the legends of Lough Gur, and at night I'd hear the haunting sounds coming from the lake. Once or twice a year, the travelling people, the old-timers, the ones with the knowing, would come and camp by the lake shore. My mother would fill their billy can with tea and another with milk for the children. And it was often time that they left with a cake of freshly baked bread under their axter. We had very little back then. That was the way of those times. But my mother would say, "Sure, God help us, those poor people have nothing at all." I would slip from my bed at night to sit by that campsite. The jug of put gin, ish gebaha, the water of life, or what in America would be known as moonshine, would be handed around. And it was then that the dancing flames of that campfire would take on the shapes of the spirits of old Ireland. Fionn McCool and the Fianna, the giant warriors that protected Ireland for hundreds of years. Diarmuid agus Grania, of their romantic but tragic tale. Cú Cullen, the hound of Cullen. Oisin agus Tirnanog, the land of everlasting youth, and of course of the Tua de Dana, the godlike people that ruled over Ireland for thousands of years, until the coming of the Celts, who drove them underground, forcing them to create the other world. And there they wait until their time will come, and it surely will, when they will once again rule over the lands of Ireland. There by that campsite, a story would have no beginning, no middle, no end, for it was a living thing, flowing and ebbing and meandering in its enchantments. And there was no time, only darkness into light and back to darkness. And in that timeless while, when my mind knew no tiredness, it was then that I was allowed to travel to the darkest caverns of my soul, where the stories of old Ireland were revealed to me. For I am a privileged one. I am a true seanchaí, a privilege given to me as a birthright. And as it's nearly time for me to take my leave of ye here tonight, my one wish for ye is that ye too can take the time to rid your minds of the troubles and worries of this world. And then you may find that you too can travel to the darkest caverns of your soul, where the culture of your people will be revealed to you. And it is until man comes to respect the cultures of other people, then and only then we may know true peace. Oh my God.
Well
Could I have my backup, please? I get it, John. I get it. Of course, as I said to you earlier, and it's been repeated here several times, this is an enchanted land, Lough Gur, and the home of the fairies. Of course, they live beneath Knockfinnell, the Honna Hill. But should the magic stick fall upon you, the fairy stick, you must obey it. For if you don't, you will bring the wrath of the fairies down upon you. So I'm going to ask Tom and Jean Tierney now to sing a verse or two of Champel Nua again. But not alone that. We had great performers here tonight, and we've had a lovely audience. But now the fairy stick is falling upon each and every one of you. And your job is to join in on Champel Nua.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll get everybody in the chorus. So I'll just repeat the chorus. Now, some people here know it better than I do, so don't want to have a problem. But for those who don't, so the chorus goes: "Sweet Champel Nua, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them, and the choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy love sleepers, Champel Nua." So that's the chorus. So I'll go. What we'll do is we'll go the opening verse, we'll do the chorus, and we'll do the closing verse, which is the said verse. May the clay press lightly o'er him. So everybody come into the chorus. Okay, Jean.
And keep an eye on them, Tom, because if they don't join in, the wrath of the fairies will fall upon you.
Oh, I long to see the churchyard by Lough Gur's romantic shore, where the shamrock and the ivy ever grow, where the wild dove and the ravens like protecting spirits soar, or the green graves of silent Champel know. Everybody? Sweet Champel know, where our tears so freely flow, or the graves of those that nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them and their choicest gifts bestow, or the graves of thy love sleepers Champel know. May the clay press lightly o'er him in his silent nameless grave, where the shamrock and the ivy ever bloom, and the beech trees tall and shady overhead him gently wave, till the trumpet blast shall call him from the tomb. Sweet Champel know, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them and their choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy lost sleepers Champel know. One more time. Oh, sweet Champel know, where our tears so freely flow, o'er the graves of those who nursed us long ago. May the heavens smile upon them and their choicest gifts bestow, o'er the graves of thy loved sleepers Champel know. Oh, the graves of thy loved sleepers Champel know.
So I'd just like to have a quick word and explain to you about the project to record the oral history and folklore of Lough Gur. Daniel Clancy approached me earlier in the year to know would we have an interest in Lough Gur in doing such a project. And you can see what's written my forehead. If it has to be done, sure, we'll go and do it. And George and Brian were good enough to come on board as well. So Daniel went away and he came back a short time later to say, yeah, it's a runner. He got funding from the Arts Council to do the project. So this will be archived and will be available forevermore online or whatever. Don't ask me about these things. I think, there's several of the local people interviewed. And a bit like the interview here with Patrick tonight, you start on one thing, you don't know where this interview is going to take you. So there have been some beautiful interviews done. So as I said, they will be all archived and available. And Brian said to me the other day that he hopes that this is not a closed project, that we can continue to interview and meet some of the local people and keep getting their stories and adding to the archive. So I think that would be lovely. So just to say to you then that we will be launching this project in the Heritage Centre for the October Bank Holiday weekend for the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy, in conjunction with the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy Festival. And everyone that participated in it will be invited to come. And then at a later stage, because of course we can only have little snippets and what have you, but then at a later stage, we hope to have a night for everyone that they can listen to the recordings and take their time over it. So hopefully that'll turn out right. So ladies and gentlemen, we've almost come to the end of the night. I'd like to thank everybody sincerely for taking part. I'd like to especially thank the performers. Fina, Tom and Jean, George, Brian, who have I left out? Tom and Mike. I nearly said Tom and Jerry. Tom and Mike. So thank you kindly for that. Yeah. I think also that I want to sincerely thank Diarmuid for recording us here tonight, and I think everyone will agree with me that he made us all feel so relaxed, and that's an art in itself. Patrick and Fina, you opened your home to us here tonight. The history, the ambience, and of course the view of the enchanted lake helped to make this such a special night. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you so very, very much.
John, I should say that when you approached me on this, you said we'd only be here for an hour.
Well,
Actually, I knew.
well, first of all, Tom has even said it here behind. First of all, the hospitality here. Sure, why would we want to go away? You're lucky you're not doing B&B. So then, as you know, well, of course, I'm very shy, so I don't do much talking. But yeah, so why wouldn't we? I thought it would only take an hour. And just before I finish, I did forget to mention someone very special, and that is the wonderful Eve. So I suppose to finish up the night, I think it might be very appropriate to have another Thomas O'Connell and Rua tune. And Fiona will play us out with a beautiful tune, Lady Ivor, isn't it? No, Ivy, sorry, Lady Ivy.